Hello, my name's Justin LeClue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're going to get a little bit extreme, because we're talking about the edgelord himself, Todd Solondz.
Todd Solondz's reputation, I think, largely rests on two landmarks of the 1990s American independent cinema boom. There was 1996's Welcome to the Dollhouse, which so memorably captured the horrible experience that high school is for so many high schoolers. And then 1998's Happiness, which is one of the most fucked up movies of all time. A movie that when I saw it as a teenager, I kept thinking, I really hope my parents don't come in the room right now. I hope they don't find out I'm watching this. They might call the cops.
But there's not even anything graphic in Happiness. So that means your parents would have to sit down and be like, what are you watching?
There are some graphic things in Happiness.
Are there? I don't remember.
Well, when Philip Seymour Hoffman jizzes on the wall.
Oh, yeah. We don't see his dick or anything like that.
No, but you see the jizz, then you see him. Wow, it's pretty gross. I don't know.
No, I don't think it is. I do that 3 times a day.
That's how all these posters are up on your wall right now?
Yeah, that's right, because he glues it to it, right? If your parents came in, you could have been like, what is he doing, Mom and Dad? If they looked at you askance, just ignoring, like, I don't know what's going on. It's happening off the frame.
Todd Solondz, his name has, faded a bit over the years. It's funny, you look at the box office and each one of his movies makes half as much money as the previous one.
Can you get
and we're getting pretty
double
close
of zero?
We're pretty close to zero at this point. So it's been a while since his last movie.
His next movie is supposed to be a big one, though, right? It's Rachel Weisz and Colin Farrell. If it gets made.
That's been in development for a while.
The last update was 2021, so it's not completely dead.
Well, we'll see. I know he's teaching at, I believe, NYU right now.
It's over for him then. Yeah, he's teaching, unfortunately.
But certainly when I was coming of age as a cinephile, he was a brand name in certain circles. And I was surprised. Well, first of all, I was a big fan of Todd Solondz. When I was a teenager, I thought he was, really, I was the perfect age for him. I was very surprised to find out that you, Justin, had never seen a Todd Solondz movie until this week.
Nope. I was very aware of him. I knew all of his movies.
Even Welcome to the Dollhouse.
No, never saw Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Why not?
I don't know. I just never ended up watching it.
You thought he was an edgelord.
Well, especially with his later movies. Every review that I would read. So I was reading it during the period of probably early 2000s. So what was coming?
Storytelling.
Yeah, very vividly remember people talking about palindromes when it came out at our favorite website, Ain't It Cool News.
Oh yeah, did they like it? Where they were like, it's the most fucked up movie ever.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I remember seeing it always at the library. They have a DVD of palindromes.
You're somebody who's not naturally drawn, as we've established, to like edgelord stuff.
No.
To like. Yeah, the transgressive stuff in
I
cinema.
look around the world, and it's fucked up enough. Yeah. I don't need to see it in my entertainment either.
Well, again, this is a difference between me and you. Mm-hmm. Definitely his movies were like very eye-opening to me, but then also...
You lived in the comfortable, suburbia life. I was a cowpoke down in Castleman.
I do think that this is actually important, too. I mean, I did grow up in a neighborhood not unlike the one in Happiness.
Mm-hmm. My brother's listening to this. He's like, what is Justin talking about? He lived on a suburban street in a small town.
Well, I assumed you were in the middle of nowhere somewhere.
No, we lived on
odd French community.
No, it was like big, medium-sized houses and like nice newly paved sidewalk. But then if you just walk down, there was nothing anymore.
Well, my interest in Todd Solondz over the years has kind of waxed and waned. I hadn't seen one of his movies in a really long time.
It feels like fans just kind of slowly peeled off of him.
I actually think I started getting a little disenchanted with him around the time of Life During Wartime in 2009. I remember being disappointed by that movie and the run of movies afterwards and finding, he's somebody who uses a lot of irony. He's somebody who uses...
He does? Oh, man, I don't know how to watch these movies.
Yeah, he's somebody who, like... the old complaint that, people level against the Coen brothers that, they hate their characters. Well, you could probably say that of Todd Solondz at times. And I don't know, there was a period, I think, when he was really rubbing me the wrong way. And especially his last movie, Wiener Dog, where, it's kind of an Oh Hazard Balthazar thing where it follows the Wiener Dog through various stories.
Through a parade of misery, if you say?
Through a parade of comical misery. And it ends, spoiler, skip ahead 15 seconds, with the Wiener Dog getting run over by a car. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, Todd, you're so edgy.
One trick you got up your sleeve.
You ran over the dog. Oh, you going to give me some more pedophilia stuff again?
There is
Mr. Pedophilia over here.
So much pedophilia in his movies.
So I got a little tired of him, and I fully expected to still be tired of him this week. but watching 4 of his movies again for the first time in years, I got to say, I really liked them. I liked them all to varying degrees. What did you think?
Liked them all.
You liked them all?
Yeah. I had a fun time touring through the world of Todd Solondz. I saw some people say like, too much to watch in a week. And I was like, nah, they're pretty funny. So
they are funny.
It's good. It's good.
And I think what strikes me, first of all, I mean, Happiness from 1998. That was a movie that I really expected to not like anymore because the leaden irony of the title. I kind of thought the whole movie would be like, you think suburbia is picket fences and leave it to Beaver? Well, guess what? There's pedophilia.
American Beauty.
Right. And I mean, it is that.
But I would say that like it kind of, gets away from that pretty quick when they have the scene where the mother goes, our lives are so good, aren't they? They're so great. Like it just nails it right on the head. All right, let's move beyond that now.
Yeah. So let's talk about Happiness. This is the quintessential Todd Solondz movie.
Wait, you don't want to start with his first film, which I watched this week?
Okay, let's talk about that one. Fear, Anxiety, and Depression.
So Fear, Anxiety, and Depression is a film written, directed, starring Todd Solondz.
Oh, starring.
Yes.
Dynamo. This is kind of the Lost Solondz movie. Everyone thinks that Welcome to the Dollhouse is the first one.
Yeah, they think that, maybe because he disowned it. It was probably taken out of his hands. Watching the movie, though, I think, what else could this have been? Because this is the movie every 20-something-year-old who has filmmaking tendency threatens to make about, like, I'm so unlovable and no women will ever like me. But I'm kind of wacky and funny, too.
Well, I don't remember it very well, but Todd Solondz in the movie looks a lot like Bananas era Woody Allen.
Absolutely.
Right down to the hair.
It's also filled with Bananas or Annie Hall era Woody Allen style, like Little Flights of Fancies. There's like original songs. One of them, I believe, sung by Todd Solondz on the soundtrack.
You posted this like bit of physical comedy where he tries to like
take a pane glass window and he smashes it against something. Like you can imagine Woody doing something better than that in his prime.
So I haven't seen this movie in forever. What did you think of it?
I think it was an interesting curiosity, and you understand why this is not the area that he went down.
Okay.
But like his earlier films are kind of like that. Like he actually stars in his early short films as well. So you can understand this would be like the, fruition of that. Like he's a playwright named Ira in New York. His parents take care of him. He has a cool best friend, and he's kind of like in love with every beautiful woman that comes his way. There's also a woman that, let's just say, he doesn't find conventionally beautiful, and he doesn't want to date her anymore. And there's like a joke where he like breaks up with her on a bridge, and then she goes to like commit suicide. Like, oh no, we're together. And then she like climbs down. So there's that hint of that Todd Solondz kind of misery filtered through that, like, but I'm a funny guy, right?
Now, it's easy to see, watching all these movies close together, why Welcome to the Dollhouse was the one that broke through, because it's the one that is, I think, the most easily saleable as a Sundance indie circa 1996.
Yes.
It's a pretty small-scale comedy, dark comedy about an unpopular girl in high school.
Now, I watched this movie yesterday with Emily, and she's told me before she loves this movie, that she was one of the people that's like, this was my, junior high experience. This is how I felt. And like, this is what made this film a hit, is that, people saw it and they felt no movie had captured this feel and this attitude of basically being bullied as a kid and like living in a suburban, situation as Welcome to the Dollhouse did.
So the main character, Dawn Wiener, played by Heather Matarazzo, is a stupendously unpopular high school student, bullied by everyone at the school, also bullied by her own family. She's kind of the ugly duckling sibling.
The middle child of the family. She has a nerdy older brother, and she also has a very charming younger sister that everybody loves.
And is being, groomed for success.
Mm-hmm. And so she's going through the world with a last name Wiener, so everybody calls her Wiener Dog. And there's bullies at school. One of them who threatens to rape her after school. That's a whole subplot of the movie.
Okay, that and the scene where she's like cornered by that other bully in the bathroom really capture like how cruel and ugly children are in a way that most movies don't capture.
No. And they also swear all the time in this movie as well, which is like, wow, finally they're capturing the actual experience of being a kid.
That is actually what middle school is like. Like one can potentially never be more foul-mouthed or more cruel, more evil than in middle school.
And I mean, it's amazing the way that like she's bullied and then she just turns that bullying against her siblings at home for like, she needs that sense of power somehow.
Yeah, needs to let it out somewhere. And that's what makes this this movie. That's what separates it. Like, the losers in Solondz's movies are not lovable.
No.
You know.
Well, I mean, Solondz would argue that they are, human beings and that there is humanity. And I would argue, having watched them all in like a week, I agree that he does care about his characters in a way that I would say that the Coen brothers at their most arch do not.
Okay.
That I find that a lot of the Coen brothers movies are like, look at these losers. Like, laugh at them, laugh at them. Todd Solondz would say that as well. Like, you can laugh at these situations.
I think there are certain characters. I'm thinking in Life During Wartime, the sibling who becomes the successful Hollywood screenwriter.
Yes, that's funny.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I detach myself from my family. I'm so miserable, but I also have all the assistants live in a giant mansion.
I hear you're dating Keanu.
Yes, I'm dating Keanu. It's not all it's made up to be.
But certainly most of his protagonists, and even like the pedophile father in Happiness, like, they are human.
Yes. And that,
on
like,
that level.
And like Life During Wartime, which we'll get to, like, he tries to revisit that as well. I mean, Welcome to the Dollhouse, I watched it and I went, I understand exactly why this hit and why it continues to hit. Like, watching it with Emily, she was like, how did Todd Solondz know all this stuff that like young kids used to do, or specifically young women used to do?
Well, but actually, because like almost the second you get away from that environment, almost the second you get to, like, I don't know, college or wherever you go afterwards, like, I think you lose... the sentimentalization process begins to happen with kids. You start to think of them as these like pure innocents.
Oh, Emily does not think of those years in elementary school as being pure and innocent. Like,
yeah.
She's like, high school was fine. Elementary school, no, not a fan.
Yeah.
So like a movie to capture that it's a little arch, but it's not arch to the extreme of like being completely disconnected, which I think is the issue with some of his later day films, where he's going down the avenue of like, oh, I need to be more extreme and, wilder. And then there's a disconnect, an emotional one to the like storytelling that he's doing.
So after Welcome to the Dollhouse, this is probably the moment when his stock is highest.
He and P.T. Anderson, neck and neck.
Well, they kind of are at the time.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys.
Yeah, he is. A Sundance Kid.
And he cashes it in with one of the most abrasive, would you call this a Hollywood movie? Above ground movies ever made.
Well, it's definitely his Magnolia. And it's a bunch of weird cast of characters doing weird and fucked up things, but in a very calm way. I saw someone compare it to a Hallmark movie. Like, Todd Solondz likes to show like kind of disturbing stuff or have intermissions with like flowery generic music over it.
And yeah, I don't think you really think about the mise en scène of a Todd Solondz movie all that much.
No, not really.
Which is not to say it isn't there, but
especially in Happiness, it's very kind of matter of fact in the way things are presented.
Yeah. So Happiness is built kind of Hannah and her sisters style around three middle-class sisters. There's Trish Maplewood, who's a happy homemaker in the suburbs. Her husband, Bill Maplewood, played by Dylan Baker, is a psychiatrist, a upstanding member of the community who is also
a pedophile.
A pedophile. We first find this out when he picks up a copy of a teen boy magazine and masturbates to it in a car.
Wait, is that what he was doing? He wasn't on frame. I couldn't tell. See, I'm playing the innocent game in case my parents walk in.
There's her successful sister, Helen, played by Lara Flynn Boyle, who's glamorous.
Yeah, she doesn't really have that much going on. She's a successful poet, and all her poetry is about being raped. And she's like, I've never been raped. It's not real. Like, I'm a fraud.
And so she finds herself in the crosshairs, if that's the right terminology, of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
What a good actor.
A great performance by Philip Seymour Hoffman as her neighbor, an antisocial recluse, somebody who goes to the office every day, keeps his head down, then comes home and goes through the phone book one by one, making obscene phone calls.
And perhaps pleasuring himself and then
perhaps
spreading that on the wall as a use of glue.
Iconic scene. Legendary.
I'm not joking when I wrote on Letterboxd that like someone in college recreated that scene as like a scene recreation.
Oh my God.
Do you find it that I don't even find it that disgusting. Like,
I find it disgusting. Okay, so wait, this person you knew in college who did that scene, did they do it unsimulated? Did they?
No. Okay. It was simulated. So it was just him like, oh. Then it cut to the wall, and then just like the jizz hits the wall.
Man, whole different time. Nobody would do that scene in college now.
No, I don't think so.
And then finally, there's the, I guess, ugly duckling sister of this trio, Joy, played by Jane Addams.
Can we just talk about that amazing opening scene with John Lovitz? It's so good.
John Lovitz's greatest performance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where basically she breaks up with him, and it's just John Lovitz like weeping for 10 minutes.
So she teaches English to Russian immigrants at a sort of local like para
She's
school.
scabbing.
She's scabbing.
Scabs.
And
we like to call them strike breakers.
Yeah, and becomes entangled with one of the Russians who takes her class, who's a bit of a con artist. There's also another plot about Ben Gazzara and Louise Lasser as their parents,
who are breaking up. We're not getting divorced. We're just going to live in different houses.
And, together this tapestry, and I mean, the one that I think everyone really remembers is Dylan Baker as the pedophile father.
Well, specifically the almost climactic scene of Dylan Baker being like, yeah, I'm a pedophile. I raped your friends, and I do it again, too.
And I liked it.
Yeah, and the kid's like, would you rape me? And he's like, no. I'd masturbate instead.
Yeah, and that scene, which is such a powerful scene, and it's obviously conveyed so much by Dylan Baker's acting, where he gives this like very affectless performance in it, but with like a tear going down his cheek, where it's like he's a genuinely sort of sick man who like actually sort of can't help himself.
Who's also a psychiatrist.
And then there's a lot of ambiguity there is a lot of ambiguity in that character, the degree to which he can help himself, the degree to which he can't.
I mean, he talks to another psychiatrist about having a dream where he's walking through the park and murdering everybody, which we see in the film.
He's cut off from his own emotions, or he very strongly compartmentalizes them. And, a useful movie to compare this to, as you alluded to earlier, is American Beauty, which is another movie that's, ripping the veil back on suburbia.
Yeah, but that movie is doing it in a very glossy and approachable way.
Well, also in that movie, Kevin Spacey puts his They Live glasses on. It's like, I see through all this. I'm liberated.
I'm doing weights in the garage.
Yeah, unlike my shrew of a wife. And, he starts to lust after the Mina Suvari character, but then at the end, he heroically decides to not have sex with the teenager.
I'm a good man, yeah.
He practically has a halo over him for not being a pedophile. And in this movie, I mean, it's a movie that it's much more extreme than anything that's in American Beauty. Like, it's like, okay, you think it's funny that, I know American Beauty came after, but it's like, you think it's funny that the Kevin Spacey character is lusting after a teen girl. Well, here's a literal pedophile dad who's like literally
a long scene. If you want to laugh, I dare you, is him trying to get a little boy to eat a sandwich so he will be drugged.
Yeah, that scene is like pure Hitchcock and also like hilarious.
Yes, because he's like, you don't want some peanut butter and jelly? And he's like, no. And he's like, anything? Like, I'll take a tuna sandwich. You're not going to eat that sandwich? It won't taste good.
And that scene really gets to the heart of, so much of what's good about Solondz, where he's dealing in both extremes and ambiguities. He presents very sad.
Are you laughing, you sicko?
Yeah, sometimes even very sick people, and they're in a sick world, and he doesn't prescribe a way out. The happiness ends. Well, it ends with a joke involving a dog.
Oh, that's a very funny scene.
Which is so funny, and it's also kind of like, you thought you were gonna get like a moral out of this.
You get nothing.
You get a dog.
You get a victory.
Yeah. You get a victory. And also, like, Happiness is a movie about a lot of people who are very, uncomfortable in a world that's telling them to be comfortable. And they're all uncomfortable to varying degrees. Maybe it's an older couple who feel apart and are divorcing, and you're not sure whether they should.
And Ben Gazzara's like, I don't feel anything.
Yeah. Maybe it's, the Joy character. Maybe it's the obscene phone caller. Maybe it's the fucking pedophile dad. And he puts them all together, and he sort of trusts you to understand that they're not all exactly the same, but they're also
fucked up in different ways. They're all
fucked up in different ways.
Yeah.
And also he trusts you to be like, you can handle this being treated in not the most solemn way. It'll be funny also. You can laugh at this.
But that's like a fine line, right? Which is like, you can laugh at this, but then, he gets accused a lot, especially in his later films, of being just like an edgelord. Right. Like, can you believe that I'm doing this?
Well, the laughter starts to sour with the Dylan Baker character. That scene where he's drugging the boy is very funny and very suspenseful. But then as the movie goes along, it stops being funny.
Yeah, until that climactic scene where his son confronts him about it.
Yeah, or then when the family goes out and they see the graffiti on the front of the house, like it's not funny anymore. And when they're having that quiet dinner, it's not funny anymore. And in this movie, it doesn't have the guardrails up. It's not telling you, it's not signaling to you when it stops being funny. It sort of trusts you to navigate that for yourself.
So if we jumped way ahead to Dark Horse, 2011's Dark Horse, What did you think of this movie when it came out at the time?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I was living the lifestyle of its central character.
Yes. Which is a man that's 35 years old and lives with his parents and works at his dad, played by Christopher Walken's company.
He's an old 35. Mm-hmm. He's a character named Abe, played by an actor named Jordan Gelber.
From what I understand is like a pretty seasoned like play guy, a man of the theater.
And this ought to have been his breakout role, but I think the problem is he's just too unlikable.
But what's interesting about him being a polished theater guy is he does bring that polish to the performance, which I really like, because it could have been a really weird kind of distancing performance. Mm-hmm. But there's just enough charm to be like, should I like this guy? And you're like, no, I don't, because he's bad.
Exactly. And also, you're set up. You've seen movies like The 40-Year-Old Virgin,
which were the rage around this time.
Right. And this movie came to theaters almost like presenting itself as a Judd Apatow movie.
Did it?
Know? Yeah, like the trailers like had that kind of like bouncy vibe to it. It feels like one of those lovable Seth Rogen man-child movies that were popular, and yet the main character is just, like he's just too awful.
Well, like the whole movie is about this guy who thinks he's the dark horse. He's the underdog. Like he's going to have his time in the sun. His mom keeps telling him this. It needs to happen.
There's a lot of ambiguity in this movie too, because he has objectively, I think, been dealt a bad hand.
Yes.
He's in a shitty world. He's in, he doesn't have a lot going for him.
Did you feel yourself in that scene where he's on the computer and there's like a $450 toy and he like goes to click bid on eBay?
I felt myself in that scene where he's at his office, his shit job that he hates.
Yeah.
And he's wasting time on eBay.
Yeah. To buy something way too expensive.
Yeah. Almost to feel something.
Yes. And you can understand that like his brother's really successful, but like, especially the way that there's a really funny line where his mom's like, why don't you go on medication again? And he's like, I don't do drugs. Like he has an image of himself and he can't get away from that. And because of that, his life is doomed.
And so what do you do? Yeah. Like in this movie, a lot of it is he retreats into a fantasy world, which is not clearly delineated.
I feel that like Todd Solondz, he uses that a little bit too much as a crutch, like later on in his career. Are there any fantasy sequence other than Dylan Baker having that hallucination and happiness?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't think so.
Yeah, and I know that like in storytelling, the movie he made after Happiness has fantasy sequences like that. Life During Wartime has a lot of that as well. And so like near the end, when the layers of like fantasy and reality are kind of getting all mixed, I was like, okay, I can understand what he's doing, but you ain't Bergman doing Wild Strawberries, my man. Like I felt it diluted a little bit, and also the like comedic misery like reached an insane point by the end.
Yeah, it absolutely did. I mean, one thing I like about the movie is the way it captures a certain like hopeless at 35 is a different vibe.
Yeah.
So Selma Blair is in this movie playing a character named Miranda who first appeared in Storytelling. So
she's the same character?
I believe that is true.
Well, we didn't talk about this. Todd Solondz has a Solondz-averse where characters will show up from movie to movie, not always played by the same actor, but their stories continuing or sometimes being rebooted in the case of Palindromes.
And Life During Wartime as well.
Well, in Palindromes, the character from Welcome to the Dollhouse commits suicide at the beginning.
And then Don Wiener comes back in Wiener Dog.
In Wiener Dog, yes. Played by the much more audience-friendly Greta Gerwig. Much of the original actor's surprise, because she read about it in the trades when it was announced.
That was funny. Like the Selma Blair character in this movie, again, there's some stuff that's fantasy, there's some stuff that's reality, but the fact that in some timeline she gets with him is sort of like at 35 you start to settle, or hope starts to recede in certain directions.
Well, especially when you still live at your parents' house.
Right.
And this movie basically ends in the only way it can. Yeah. There's a little bit of sad hope, I guess, at the end that like if you had done things a little bit differently, maybe you would have been a little bit happier.
Right. And you might leave a movie like this thinking, well, what are we supposed to take away from this aside from like life is shit and the world is hopeless? And I don't know. Sometimes it's nice to just see like a piece of art that reflects the world as it is in a way that's also funny, And it's not actually miserableism. Like it's funny throughout, which I think
it's very funny. And I think the performance helps that. It's probably his slickest film as well.
Yeah.
Like the one that's going for like the biggest laughs, even though that I feel like people who kind of stumbled upon the film expecting the 40-year-old version would have bounced off of it because they're like, this is not the film I thought it was going to be. Now, what do you think of the one that, you got to visit effed up movies to watch? watch palindromes.
Yeah, that's right. I found this on a website called the Effed Movies. I'm sure some of our listeners have stumbled on it because when I posted about Effed Movies,
People are like, I love that website.
yeah. So palindromes is first of all, I believe he self-financed this movie.
Really?
And I think you would have to.
Yes.
Because who would pay for this movie?
They probably went, pedophilia again, Todd Solondz?
Oh man, there's so much pedophilia in this movie. It's a story of a teenage girl named Aviva who decides she wants to become pregnant, becomes impregnated by just a teenage friend of hers, is pressured by her mother, played by Ellen Barkin, to get an abortion, and then runs away from home, eventually joins a sort of Christian anti-abortion mission run by a character named Mama Sunshine, where she has collected mother hen style all of these forsaken, unwanted children, one of whom is blind, one of whom, some of whom have various physical disabilities, this and that. Basically, one who has Down syndrome, basically the sorts of children who, when people are looking to terminate a pregnancy, are often looking for things like that. And the movie goes from there.
We missed an important
There's
detail.
also some
Will.
pedophilia.
You missed the detail.
Well, the central thing is that the Aviva character is played by how many people? 12 people?
A lot, yeah. That,
including Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Very briefly, I was surprised to learn. And that, each, scene change up until the end is designated by title cards.
Right.
Just to give you a hint that, this is about to happen.
So Aviva also appears as in the form of Sharon Wilkins, who is a large black woman. There's a boy who plays her at one point.
There's many young women, which it gets especially troublesome in the whole sequence where one of the versions of Aviva has sex with someone that picks her up at a truck stop and falls deeply in love with this grown man.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that subplot, to be honest. That sort of pedophilia.
Well, that's when it gets to the extreme, almost cartoony range where they go to kill her father.
Yeah, the movie began to lose me just a little bit.
In the Jesus section, I feel, because...
Well, I mean, okay, so the Jesus section with Mother Sunshine and the kids, when they do that Christian rock song...
Yeah.
There's something kind of Lynchian and uncanny about that.
Yeah.
But
Todd Solondz finally gets to do, I assume, an original composition there.
Yeah, that song, Jesus Nobody But You, has haunted me ever since I first saw this.
It's a banger. It's haunted you, though.
Yeah. I'll hear it in my head just, at random moments. Jesus Nobody But You.
Would love me.
Yeah.
Well, what is Todd Solondz's position on abortion based on this movie?
Well, I mean, this is a movie that, probably a lot of people wouldn't want to entertain this movie at this moment because at a moment where, Roe versus Wade has just been overturned and there's, maybe a lot of people would not want to watch an ambiguous movie about abortion right now, which is fair enough. But I mean, if you want a movie that deals in ambiguities, if you want a movie that reflects that the world, if you're a teenage girl being pressured by her mother into an abortion, whatever you think of it, it's not fun.
No. It's not.
Nobody's having a good time in that moment. And you want a movie that sort of lingers in that moment a little bit and tries to show a common universal experience in all of its complexity and difficulty.
I mean, if all of his films are very funny, I would say this one, not very funny.
Not very funny, and also not going for the big laughs,
No.
but there's a bizarre, it has a kind of almost fairy tale tone going through it.
Well, a Night of the Hunter is what you feel like he's going for.
Or a
here.
dreamlike tone.
Did you notice this continues the Todd Solondz verse with Matthew Farber, Don Wiener's brother, showing up and being accused of pedophilia?
Yeah.
Everyone is a pedophile in these movies.
Wrongly accused, I think. This is the movie. Palindromes is the one where you're okay, do I have to pull my kids away from Todd Solondz at the grocery store next time I see him?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's an incredibly what's disturbing about it is it's not a movie that deals in comforting you. It's a movie that depicts just a lot of really fucked up situations and headspaces and says this is what the world actually is when you live in it.
And Palindromes is the one where you're where does Todd stand on these things?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no guarantee that he's pro-life or pro-choice or whatever. And I honestly don't really think, I think you could go to this movie and say, well, this is art. Art is a space to work through ideas. I mean, the movie's not propaganda.
No.
I mean, if it is, it's bad propaganda.
Hey, I would see it I'm not joking. In every library I would go to, they would have a copy of Palindrome.
Boy, I wonder who like stumbled on this one by accident, because I actually think this is the least accessible one, even more so than Happiness.
I don't think you would understand what was going on at first if you just stumbled on. You're like,
I
wait,
didn't know that like 12 people would play
the
central
conceit
role.
of the movie.
I thought that central conceit, all the different actors playing her, like I thought it worked better than it might have.
I think it would have worked better if they had grounded the story more. That as it reaches the extreme fairy tale or like just wild level of the end, the disconnect of having different actors kind of takes you out of it. But if it had been more something like a Welcome to the Dollhouse plot, and that's why he said he made it, is that so many people from all walks of life said, you captured my experience in Welcome to the Dollhouse. And he said, well, okay, if it speaks to this many people, can I make a similar story played by different actors and will it have the same effect?
And I think,
no.
Well, I think many of the actors on their own individually
work
are
and they sell the
excellent.
moments.
And by the way, as to your question of like where does Todd Solondz stands on these issues, or like what is the movie trying to say, those early scenes where Ellen Barkin and the daughter are like, you know, the mother is trying to get the daughter to agree to an abortion. I don't think either character is
Incorrect?
is
Yeah,
bad
I agree with you.
in that scene.
Even though she's like, you know, we were supposed to have another kid and we didn't have the money and we didn't, but Ellen Barkin's performance, you can feel the sadness
you get
in
it.
that.
You get it. Yeah. And like the fact that she's looking back on it as the right decision, but also sad. And maybe Todd Solondz is saying that it wasn't the right decision, but like, I think there's room for ambiguity there.
So we'll all be seated for the next TIFF premiere of Todd Solondz film that'll play.
Oh, I want to ask you about Life During Wartime, because you watched it. I watched like just a couple minutes of it to kind of refresh myself. This was in 2009. Todd Solondz comes back, you know, after Palindromes. It's like, okay, time to
Give
get some asses in seats.
Yeah, give
Let's
the
do a
hogs what they
sequel.
want.
Folks like a sequel. Well, how about a sequel to? I'm kidding. Like it is a
Happiness.
sequel. It is a sequel to Happiness.
Yeah, all the characters come back, played by different actors.
Right. So Dylan Baker as the pedophile father, Bill, he's now played by Ciarán Hinds. That's how you pronounce his name, right?
Don't look at me about that.
Being paroled from prison. Paul Rubens plays the John Lovitz part. Michael K. Williams plays the Philip Seymour Hoffman role.
Love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if this movie works. Too much fantasy stuff throughout.
Well, like I say, when I saw this one, this is when I started to turn on him a little bit, because there's that early scene where the Allison Janney character, who, you know, is Trish Maplewood, after she's just had a date with Michael Lerner, she comes back and her son, the boy son, is asking her, well, how did your date go? And she's saying something like, oh, I mean, he
made me wet.
He touched me and he made me wet. Oh, what am I saying? And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh, Todd, you know, like, oh, I get it. It's like, oh, she's talking about
I can't believe it.
She's talking about sex stuff in front of a child. It's like I can almost see.
All right, Todd, you're banned from working with any children anymore.
And I feel like the movie is kind of full of things like that, where I almost feel like the, for want of a better term, edgelord stuff is poking me in the ribs a little too much.
I do like the continuation of the Dylan Baker stuff and his storyline. I find that very moving.
Ciarán Hinds, all those scenes are played like dead serious. The scene with Charlotte Rampling is very powerful. The scene with his son at the end,
so good.
powerful.
And he's just like, I just wanted to make sure you weren't like me. And then he just leaves. Very good. But then it's surrounded by, like you said, stuff like, oh, he's a pedophile. Like somebody else is accused of being a pedophile.
Right. And it's funny because in Happiness, everything in this quilt like somehow fits together, even though like, one's an obscene phone caller, one's a divorced couple, one's a pedophile. Somehow tonally he ties it all together. And I don't think that a similar spell is cast by Life During Wartime.
I think it's because there's a more kind of like cartoonish feel to it all, which is also brought, like the cinematography is like glossy in a way that it wasn't in Happiness.
Yeah.
The colors are more saturated. And I think it's just Todd has been like pushing this as he's been making movies further and further. And like, that's why it doesn't quite work in Life During Wartime.
So I hope Todd Solondz makes another movie at some point. You alluded to a movie that's been in development for a few years with Rachel Weisz and Colin Farrell called Love Child. When it was when it was announced in 2021, Solondz was quoted in Variety as saying, "This is my first movie with a plot and my first movie taking place in Texas. It's fun and it's sexy and it's shaped by the Hollywood movies that made me want to become a filmmaker. I've loved Rachel and Colin's work forever, and I'm so honored to be able to excite their passion for serious and unexpected work as well." And when I hear that, I think of like, you remember in The Simpsons when Moe tried to turn the bar
Family
into a
food bag?
family restaurant? He had the smile.
But did you read the synopsis for the film? Because it's going to sound like mother having sex with son.
Well, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. But like the fact that he's like, it's fun. It's like the movies that made me love movies.
He hasn't made a movie in a long time, Will.
Could you imagine Todd Solondz at the pitch meeting being like, okay, none of that pedophile stuff.
Are you sure, Todd? He's like, you got me. So as per usual, you can send us letters at importantcenterclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from Austin Alderman. And he goes, Justin and Will, with the recent Emmy nominee announcement and the unforgivable snubbing of the beloved Irma Vep HBO series, I was wondering what you think about the continuations of a film to the small screen. Obviously, your high watermark will be Kevin Smith's Clerks, the animated series. But what else do you think lives up to its big screen predecessor? Which ones fall flat? Also, if you wanted to do an Olivier Assayas episode and rock it to the top of the podcast charts, obviously I wouldn't complain.
Well, I like Olivier Assayas.
I like him too. Yep.
Yeah. I have not seen the Irma Vep HBO show, though.
No. Here's the thing.
And I want to.
Here's the thing. Just make a movie. This is my opinion on all of this stuff. We talked a while back that Park Chan-wook made a Jean Le Carré adaptation that stars Florence Pugh and Michael Shannon. Neither of us have watched it because we don't want to watch 6 hours of something or 7 hours of something.
So I do feel that way. I'll tell you, I remember a few years ago I watched the first season of Fargo, and
Like that show.
it's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, for a lot of it, it's like, wow, Billy Bob Thornton's good. Martin Freeman's good. I'm really liking this. And around episode 6 or 7, I was like, this really feels like it's kind of spinning its wheels a bit. Like,
Welcome to prestige television.
like surely there's a shorter way to tell this story. And then I thought, oh yeah, there was. It was called Fargo. It was
Well,
a
the movie's
movie.
a little bit different,
It was a
isn't
movie
it?
from 1996. Well, yeah, they grafted Fargo onto No Country for Old Men, and they made a show.
The issue with like all these auteur directors doing TV shows is you can't do it in TV time. You can't. So just make a movie. God damn it.
But obviously, the best TV show based on a movie is
Clerks, the live action series.
with Jim Brewer.
Yep, that's right. Playing Randall.
And who could forget My Big Fat Greek Life?
Godzilla, the animated series that was a spinoff of the Matthew Broderick show. I like that.
Never saw a whole episode, but I hear it was better than the movie.
Yes, it was. Godzilla got to fight monsters.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the TV show. Have you ever seen that pilot?
Don't you mean Parker Lewis Can't Lose, which was the Ferris Bueller's TV show ripoff?
Oh, that's funny. But there was an actual like Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, I know there was.
And people need to look up the pilot to the Ferris Bueller's Day Off TV show because it opens with the guy, whoever plays Ferris Bueller, being like, he's next to a like full-sized cardboard cutout of Matthew Broderick, and he's like, you probably saw him in the movies. He said he was me, Ferris Bueller. And then he takes out a chainsaw and like destroys it, and it's like, well, I'm the real Ferris Bueller. And you see that and think, well, if I liked the movie, I'd be instantly like,
I don't like you.
I'd be like, oh, I liked that guy.
Who could forget Bill and Ted, the live-action TV series?
Oh, yeah.
Or
I completely forgot about that.
Weird Science, the live-action TV series.
Yes,
That played in
yes.
syndication for some reason in Canada all the time.
Both those shows were on YTV.
Yeah, oh, that's why I saw it all
Yeah.
the time. Weird Science. That was the theme song.
Did you ever watch Ash versus the Evil Dead?
I did, and I liked it a lot. Well, this is what I'll say. I liked the first and second season. I really liked the third season when they got a new showrunner and they could break away from this frustrating idea of what the Evil Dead is, so they got to be much sillier and have monsters and stuff like that. That's what I like. But when you do a TV show like that and they stood too close to that kind of stuff of like, oh, we can only recreate the gags and the deadites from the movies. Don't like that. That's not, I don't want that.
Finally, the most obvious example, and a show I've never seen a single second of, is MASH.
Oh, yes, that's
But
right.
I'm just going to say it because somebody will write in.
Yeah, don't write in, please. You have to
I
say
know,
this every time.
I know what MASH is. You don't need to tell me MASH is real.
Oh, I had one on the tip of my tongue, and now MASH just obliterated it from my mind.
Ace Ventura, the cartoon.
Oh, well, and The Mask?
And
cartoon?
Dumb and Dumber also had a cartoon.
Dumb and Dumber had a cartoon?
Yeah, it did. So, I mean, I'm sure you remember the Ace Ventura, The Mask crossover episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What
where
an event
he puts
that
the
was.
mask on his butt, Ace Ventura does.
I forget that.
Yeah.
That rocks. I'm going to look that up again.
I was at a used bookstore, and I picked up the Ace Ventura like animated series that like came packaged with one of the versions of the mask or of Ace Ventura, and I was like, nah, I don't need this. Even if it was $1, put it away.
I like the Ace Ventura animated series was great because they actually had a bunch of the characters from the movie, like that computer guy. You remember him? There was a computer guy that Ace Ventura, who he was at the heavy metal place.
Oh, I don't remember Ace Ventura.
What's the password? New England clam chowder.
Yeah. All I remember is do not go in there. Rewind. Oh, I got to fast forward by the shark part. Too scary when it pops out of the water.
Then stop before the last third of the movie.
Yeah, the movie just ends. Ace has sex in bed.
And that's
the
last
movie
scene.
ends.
Yep.
Yeah. Wait, do I not see him do the tasteless slow motion stuff, which I loved as a kid?
Oh, yeah. We got to see that.
Yeah, you got to see that. And man, did we do an episode on Ace Ventura? I feel we did. Or we talked about it when we watched Jim Carrey.
We talked about Jim Carrey in like episode, 7?
All right, we got to sit down and watch Ace Ventura together. I don't think I've done it in a decade.
Let's do it.
And I was trying to think. Oh, you know Bill and Ted, the animated series?
Yeah.
They actually did their own voices. Even George Carlin did his own voice in the cartoon.
So
Yeah.
Keanu, Alex Winter?
Yep.
Wow.
They did their own voices and stuff like that.
Not bad.
Back to the Future. There's so many animated series stuff. That's a one sad thing is you never get all those shitty license things coming out. Even though Netflix just got a Kong Skull Island animated show that just popped up. So.
Oh, neat. Oh, okay. One more. I'm loving this topic. Did you know there was an Abbott and Costello cartoon show in like the 60s? A really cheap one. So Costello was dead at that point, but Abbott was alive, and Abbott was living in a one-room apartment because he didn't pay his taxes for like 20 years, and then
20 years?
The IRS caught up with him, and so he was doing anything for money, obviously, and he was so old he really couldn't do anything. So he did the voice of Abbott, and by that point he's, I don't know, well, he's probably like 68, which is like old.
Like 140.
That was like 108 by 1965 standards, and you'd hear him be like, Costello. Yeah, the man's name is who?
Hey, we're forgetting a trio of comedians who came to life on the small screen.
Well, I mean, there was the old Three Stooges.
Yes.
But then there was the new Three Stooges.
Where cartoons, live action segments with like them at the beach, barely moving.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I love that.
Great topic. We should do an episode where we watch a series of something or the pilot of each like movie-based.
Oh, that's such a great idea. We do Clerks, we do Ferris Bueller, we do...
You know what? Get on the Discord of the Important Cinema Club Patreon.
Good failed TV pilots based on movies.
Oh, failed TV pilots?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. There's so many, too.
Yeah.
So many.
Uncle Buck.
Oh, but that was a series. I think it turned into... There was a second Uncle Buck series that started recently, too.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Properties, IP, it's worth money. They're not giving it away. So our next letter is from James, and it's a little long and specific to read on this podcast, but thank you very much for sending it. There's some great movie suggestions in here based on other stuff that we talked about. He also suggests we did a call for editors a little while back.
Episodes about editors specifically.
Yeah, and we said it's a little difficult because, like, is an editor shaping the movie? Is there stamp on it?
The director's the only important crew member, is what we said, I think.
Or it's difficult to ascertain, I believe, is what we came out with.
I think we said the director is the god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Much.
That's what we said. And he suggests two editors, Didi Allen and Marie-Sophie Dubus. And Marie-Sophie Dubus worked with the likes of Orson Welles in late period, like F for Fake, Andrzej Zulawski, and Jean-Pierre Melville, and a couple of Emmanuel films, which
Emmanuel, sorry. Boop, 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 boop.
Oh, now Will sits
My antenna went up.
And we also have Didi Allen, who edited like tons of Hollywood New Wave films. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever heard her name before.
No.
But looking at her credits, I was like, wow, she seemingly shaped a lot of these movies, including all the good Arthur Penn movies.
Interesting. Now, do we have interviews with her?
Yep, there are some online.
Excellent.
I saw on YouTube, there's like a synopsium they did over Zoom, a bunch of editors after she passed away just a couple of years ago. And it's like 3.5 hours, and they bring like tons of editors in to talk about her work. So I'm probably going to give that a background listen and see like, you know, the context I can get from that. So lots of movies. She even did some like really cheapo sci-fi films early in her career. So a lot to explore. And of course, we're going to have to watch the movie that she edited for the auteur of Space Jam.
Joe Pytka.
Yep. Let It Ride, starring Richard Dreyfuss, the monster who gave us his son.
And by the way, folks, on our Patreon this week, we are talking about the 1973 East Meets West spaghetti western kung fu film, The Fighting Fists of Shanghai Joe, also known as My Name is Shanghai Joe, starring Klaus Kinski.
Is it one of the great spaghetti westerns filled with squibs, you know, violence and other stuff? Well, you're going to have to listen to the episode to find out. Patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club.
A lot of digressions in that episode.
Yep. Do we talk about Bob Dylan retiring? We do.
Put it on and pretend we're in the room.
Yeah.
And you're just listening.
Well,
you're overhearing us.
As a podcast listener, when you stay on topic too much, kind of boring, kind of zone out. So,
Yeah.
Or keep it short, like the Important Cinema Club. And on that note, until next week, my name's Justin Clue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. Big announcement.
Yes, big announcement. In Toronto, as we've mentioned,
Which we assume that you've moved to by this point.
yes, Toronto, or as it is known, Toronto, we have a screening series at the Fox Theatre in the Beaches neighborhood. It's called Important Cinema Club Masterpiece Classics. They've been very kind to let us periodically show movies that we like.
Yeah, no guidance, no like, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're just like, can we show Hell's a Poppin'? They're like, okay.
All three movies we've requested, they've said, sure.
Yeah.
And people have come out and they've had a great time.
But more of you could come out.
Well, those people could also be you.
Yes,
So
listener.
it's going great and you can be part of the movement. And boy, we've got a screening coming up August 15th in the fair city of Toronto at the Fox Theatre, 7 o'clock, August 15th. Get your tickets now, foxtheatre.ca. The movie is, drumroll, Ed Wood's Glen or Glenda.
And specifically, the Ag for Restoration that was recently done.
That's right. So one of the greatest films of all time, Ed Wood's unclassifiable documentary, experimental film, exploitation film, autobiographical what's it about gender diversity.
Now, will I be able to riff during the screening?
No,
Oh.
no, do not riff. This movie is a classic sort of ancestor to LGBTQ cinema. We want everyone to feel welcome at this screening.
But it is a funny film, though.
Well, you can laugh.
Yeah.
When Bela Lugosi says, beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. He eats little boys.
Yeah.
You can laugh.
Yeah. Now, we don't want to be the laugh police either, because that's not fair.
No.
But
But this is but listen,
listener, you know what we're talking
you know
about.
what we're talking about. Don't be Tom Servo. Don't be Crow T Robot. This isn't a fucking Neil Breen movie.
No.
This is a work of art, this film.
I feel like these movies, especially the Ed Wood ones, do not usually get shown in that context.
Oh man. I mean, yeah, we want you to see this movie for the extraordinary one-of-a-kind piece of art it is. If you've never seen Glen or Glenda, if you think it's just, it's a bad movie, it's the Golden Turkeys.
The shots don't match. That's why we watch this, right?
I'm telling you, you have never seen a movie like this. No movie has ever behaved the way this does. The melding of dream and reality, just the mushing together of all sorts of different genres, like 5 layers of narrators. You know, it is accidental David Lynch, you know?
And beep, 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 beep. What's this? An update? People have been asking, what's going on with Revenge of the Dead, aka Night of the Ghouls? I'll say, we're working on it.
There will be a Blu-ray
Yes.
of
2 discs.
Yeah.
There's too much stuff.
Folks, it's going to be good.
For the first time, presented in widescreen.
Oh, man.
Which is the way it is clearly meant to be presented.
Yeah, but it's going to be in widescreen and it's going to be in full screen.
In full screen. You can watch both versions. Will, over the last few months, has been reaching out, trying to get, like, stuff that we can put on the disc.
There are going to be some very good special features on it. It's going to be the ultimate Night of the Ghouls / Revenge of the Dead experience.
Now, is it a 4K restoration? It is not. It is from a theatrical print.
It's a beautiful 2K scan with a lot of grain, a lot of beauty,
Yes.
a lot of atmosphere, way better than the version you've been seeing. So
You can look at it and say, hey, look, there's an Ed Wood poster in the background of the shot.
so good. So you're going to have so much fun with that. And by the way, I just want to back to our Glen or Glenda screening. It's not just going to be the movie. We're going to have a short film. Not sure what it is yet, but there's going to be a short.
And you get a little program for free.
A little free program that you'll never get anywhere else with exclusive writing. So, and you're gonna have fun. Justin will be there selling Gold Ninja Blu-rays if you want us to, autograph you so you can get it tattooed on your body. This is your chance. Like, we'll be forced to talk to you. So
Yes. We got nowhere to go.
Take advantage. This is our night, but it's also your night.
Yeah, so come on down August 15th, Glen or Glenda, foxtheater.ca to pick up your tickets.